Okay, so you've got a wide range of stakeholders on both the DoD side, including partner nations, as well as on the commercial side. Share with us some success stories. You mentioned beyond visual line of sight. You mentioned UTM. I'm curious if you're working with any companies on that front, or even to the extent you can share on the military side. How are folks successfully using your technologies for this safety function that you've been talking about?
Yeah, so it's a work in progress, as you know,
Yeah.
because a few years ago, you and I probably both sat here thinking that we'd be in Jetson land right now and we'd be certifying aircraft and we'd be flying line of sight and receiving packages and warehouse deliveries via
I have
drone.
to
And
say something. I just saw the latest Alien movie, and it's 2030, right? Like, think about that. It's like 5 years from now. And they're in space and they're doing all this stuff, and it's just like, huh, So, and I think some of the original movies were all like 2030 as well, like all the ones with Sigourney Weaver and whatnot.
yeah,
But you're right. Yeah, here we are thinking that we would be flying around, and air taxis and drones would be ubiquitously delivering goods in every neighborhood across the land, and we're not quite there yet.
no, we're not. And part of that is because of the safety that we're kind of working on. We work with the FAA on our TCA committees like SC 147, SC 228 for DAA, et cetera, ASTM. Everybody's really working on this. So it's not that technology isn't advancing, but technology in a way is advancing faster than we can safely use it. And that's what we want to be careful of, because we can't be the next gen iPhone. We've talked about this probably in the past.
Yeah.
You can't necessarily have a minimum viable product and then throw it into airspace with flight over people, with operations over moving vehicle, or in congested airspace that has other aircraft. Because if it fails, you can't just reboot it.
Yeah.
It's weight falling out of the sky on people or crashing into another aircraft, right? So we've got to be careful, and I think the FAA and the global civil aviation authorities are doing a very good job of trying to go as fast as they can. I'm sure they can go probably a little faster, and certainly the FAA can go a little faster.
Yeah.
But they're trying to make sure that they're taking risk into account and then putting rules in place to ensure adequate safety, risk-based, right?
Right.
So if it's a paper airplane, you don't necessarily have to have robust safety solutions on it, right? But if it's a 50-pound aircraft or a 100-pound aircraft that could hurt somebody, you got to have safety solutions. So we're making, it's still a work in progress, but some of the progress we've seen, we've all seen just recently a lot of beyond line of sight waivers from the FAA.
Yes.
One, I think, super critical one that happened in May, I think, of this year. And we've been working with this partner for a couple of years, actually, but American Aerospace Technologies with their Air Ranger platform, which is a Group 3. So it's a 300-pound aircraft for doing long linear infrastructure inspection.
Yeah.
Under Chevron, they got a really, really large scale, not just waiver, but exemption, which basically says, okay, you don't need to comply with this specific rule because you have something that protects against that.
Yeah.
And this is it's got the MXS on board, which does ADS-B in and out. It's got the ACAS computer, but we're not yet relying on the ACAS logic because we still have to get enough test cases to prove that to the FAA. But it's got ADS-B in that we're presenting to an operator that can fly this thing well beyond visual line of sight without visual observers. And it's got 2 Echodyne radars on board for all-weather detection of non-cooperative traffic, because in that kind of airspace, you're going to have a lot of crop dusters and stuff, and people who don't fly with a transponder, probably legally don't fly with a transponder, but you still don't want to crash into them.
Yeah.
So that was a really exciting and we think broadly impactful exemption, because they'll continue to fly and collect data, but now you can start setting up these big ranges of airspace where something is trusted to fly beyond line of sight. So that was a really
Something big too. I mean, Tom, if memory serves, I remember writing about some of the initial trials in this in the Texas area, if I recall correctly. And it was like for VTOL magazine. I know it was AATI, and I'm almost 100% sure it was your transponders on board for those initial flights. I know you've been working with them for a while.
That was with NASA, probably under the NASA
That was at
program, which
NASA.
got yep,
You're exactly right. That was with
yep.
NASA. And then it sounds like that's progressed now to, let's call it real world ops, right, with Chevron. So, wow.
Yeah.
So, you know, like we talk about, oh, we're not the Jetsons yet, but, you know, in some respects, we have come far because I remember the early days of that with NASA, as you said.
Yeah.
This today, where there's an exemption, not just a waiver, you know, and there's nuances there. That's really important. You know, the
Right.
FAA saying you don't even need to do this anymore because you're good.
Right.
That's hugely significant. So,
And it's not just for, hey, wow, the technology is advancing, we're allowed to fly beyond line of sight,
yeah,
but think about that now from a Chevron perspective. You can use this system rather than putting another piece of traffic up into the crowded airspace with a person on it, right? It
yeah,
eliminates cost and risk associated with manned aircraft. And again, I think I've heard where drones and automation really is best for what is it? It's routine, it's boring, it's risky, and there's an R
oh,
word for
adult dirty
boring.
dangerous and
Yeah, dull. Yeah, that's it. The dull
adult
date. But if you
dirty
think about
dangerous.
that,
We're using the B's, but it's the three D's. And there's somebody said a fourth one. I forget what the fourth one is, but it's also a good one. But yes, definitely dull, dirty, dangerous
yeah, the
jobs.
dull date, and that's what that would be with a man or a woman, right? A human
Yeah,
in an aircraft, whether it's a fixed wing aircraft or a rotorcraft. It's going to be expensive, but it's also kind of risky. You're flying out over airspace that you know you're a long way from home. There's other aircraft in the airspace. You're trying to get close enough to a pipeline to inspect it. You're trying to use camera systems and maybe not fly the aircraft. It's easier for an automated system to do that. Takes the risk out of it. It's also pretty boring, these long linear flights, right?
yeah.
So that was a super exciting one. We also had one in Europe with a company called Primico. They're a Czech manufacturer. They make the Primico 150, it's called. And they got a broad clearance for it's like a type cert, but it's not quite a type cert, right? For safe flying of the Primico 150, and that uses our MXS ADS-B in and out.